Hello, my name is Henry Biggs, and I am a student in the Research Seminar class in Education and Leadership at the University of Pittsburgh. My professor is Dr. Jerry Longo. As an educator, I have been concerned with the achievement gap and how African Americans and Latino students are being affected. My focus in this review deals with the African American and Latino high school males. My topic is the achievement gap effects on African American and Latino high school males. This review addresses three main areas of concern that contribute to the achievement gap and how they affect African American and Latino high school males. They are microaggression, the wealth gap, and the opportunity gap. Before we look more closely at these three main concerns, let's take a look back in history. The historical view within this review gives insight into what may have contributed to the achievement gap. I found that some scholars shared many concerns. Howard, 2010, reminds us of how African slaves were systematically denied schooling for centuries, which contributed to the downfall of equity in education that ultimately created the achievement gap. Latson Billings, 2006, says that we do not have an achievement gap, but an education debt. Milner, 2015, reminds us about the Jim Crow laws, slavery, and racial discrimination that lasted into the 20th century. As we look at the three main areas of concern, we will see inequity, racism, and discrimination. Microaggression is negative racial slights and insults toward people of color. Some examples of microaggression are, so, like what are you? Or, you're very pretty for a dark-skinned girl. No, where are you really from? And, you don't act like a normal black person, you know. Can I touch your hair? These comments could be intentional or unintentional. The wealth gap deals with the inequity of funds between the races and unequal distribution of family income. Doing this review brought to my attention how prevalent this issue really is. The Forbes 400 chart shows how billionaires, who are the richest Americans, have as much wealth as all African American households, plus one-third of America's Latino population. The opportunity gap puts families at a disadvantage and does not give them access to much needed resources. For example, the opportunity to learn, having the necessary resources that other families have, the same curriculum opportunities, access to quality teachers, private tutors, and extracurricular activities in the community. As African American and Latino males grow into adulthood and prepare to raise a family, they know that they will inherit these conditions, and many decide to drop out of school to pursue employment early. The wide gap in learning can be discouraging as well. These are a few of the negative impacts of these three concerns. Microaggression affects a student's sense of belonging. Without feeling a part of their class, they tend to arrive late or skip school. It affects their self-esteem, their self-worth. Acting out sometimes leads to suspensions, which affects their attendance at school and in turn affects the overall graduation rate. The wealth gap negatively affects family income, family resources. Not having the necessary resources does not allow for adequate health care, which in turn can cause health issues and limits community involvement. The opportunity gap affects access to resources, which may be due to white privilege or families living outside of the core society, limited resources, and situations that may trigger suspensions at school and limited extracurricular activities in the community. In order to eradicate the achievement gap for African American and Latino males, there are certain obstacles that must be addressed. Overcome teacher bias, poverty, and being taught by teachers who are less qualified, which can obstruct academic success. Continuing this strategy could lessen the effects of the achievement gap. There should be stratified, strategic, and combined efforts by scholars and educators to zero in on methods that would be effective in narrowing the gap, then move toward closing it altogether. In conclusion, as scholars have posited, it is important for researchers to examine other aspects that contribute to the negative effects of the achievement gap and approach it from a different perspective. If the opportunity gap can be lessened, we might be able to gain headway and see significant changes in academic achievement for African American and Latino youth, especially young African American and Latino males. In this review, readers will be able to read the thoughts of different scholars and their concerns on the achievement gap and the effects on African American and Latino males. If there are any concerns that readers may have regarding the achievement gap and some of its effects, this review will give insight and informative discourse from several prominent scholars. Enjoy the read. Thank you.